I knew I needed support, and I wanted to work with a group. I didn't want one-on-one.
Yeah.
I wanted, the energy, the feedback, the perspectives of other people. I had seen you in the webinar and, even virtually, I just made a connection, which,
Yeah.
and that's probably the most important thing. So you obviously have the gift and it's very easy to connect with you. I wanted a clearer path and I wanted, I guess, on it, now I'm thinking about it, a little more accountability, and somebody to, push when the push was needed. Um, I wanted to think more about my whole, social network, and I, not just from COVID, but, different life choices. I feel isolated, so I kind of needed to think outside of. I work from home, all the time, so I wanted to think about my social network. Um, and I'm on the fence, still am on the fence about the next chapter of my professional life, and I wanted some help in figuring that out.
Beautiful. Well, that is so much more colorful when you really help us understand that. And I'm just going to repeat it, make sure I got it right. So you really wanted to be in a group. You wanted that support and that energy. You wanted to get out of isolation, which is a whole lot to do with being in a group. You wanted to improve your health, things that you'd been talking about for a long time. You wanted to actually do those things, right? And then you really wanted to take a look at your next chapter. Like, what would that even look like anyway? Is that right?
Exactly right.
Yeah, beautiful. So, as you were doing these things, what surprised you?
It was a little harder than I expected,
Mm,
um, and not in a bad way. Oh, it was so painful. You know, it the ikigai, one of the exercises to really dig deep into, what's your purpose, what do you like, what are you good at. Um, that took a lot of thought and energy. So
mm,
it wasn't something that you could say, "Oh, it's 20 minutes before we're meeting. I can just whip this out."
yeah,
There's no cheating.
no cheating.
If you want the results you want, you have to put in the time and energy, and that's a big thing I would say to people. This isn't a magic wand. You have to put in the work, you have to
Mhm.
put in the energy, and you'll reap what you sow, so they say, right? Um,
What
so
surprised you, the
that it was
depth
a
of
yes,
time that it took to
yes,
really dig deep. Maybe you had this idea that it would just come so easily and naturally, but you really realized that you had to carve out, you had to say no to other things you could have been doing in order to really focus on you.
yes.
And as a result of focusing time and energy on you, what has transpired?
I've taken some things that I thought were possible paths and said no to those. And
Okay.
that's just as important. It's like I cross these things off. Um,
Okay.
yeah. And, obviously due to some life challenges, um, I had to deal with other issues. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And I'll just say this is that I watched you put a lot of time and energy into that ikigai, that discernment, deep discernment process, and the beautiful pictures and words and energy that you allowed to come out from within. It was palpable. And you pointed out you had life challenges. Absolutely. We all do. You know, it's I've heard of on different topics like oh, I don't know, something that we don't want to talk about, like identity theft. It's not if it happens, it's when. So you didn't have identity theft, but you had another big life thing happen that you could not have changed, right? So, and that occurred after the discern. You did the decide, and you did the discern, and then of course you did the discover. But in the middle there, right in that little gap, you had the big life shadow come in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. You didn't take your pencil and sharpen it in discover. It looked different.
Absolutely.
And the discernment process, I feel like was really valuable to you. I mean, it certainly seemed like it was.
Yes, it was. I have to admit, it would be good for me next week when it's quiet, to pull it all out again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was happy how the group coalesced. I really feel connected to the group. It was almost as if we were together in a room.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting that you're saying, you wanted the community, you didn't want to be in isolation, but you didn't want to be on Zoom.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm very picky.
It was a Zoom program. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear though, that it really worked for you. And that while we are on Zoom, I do 95% of my work on Zoom, that you were able to have that connection. Beautiful. So what would you say you learned in the last 13 weeks which was the discover part?
I think what I learned is that I always say, oh, I'm an introvert. I don't want people. I don't like people. No, it's not that I don't like them, but if I have a choice, I need my alone time. And I think I learned that, I don't think that's really true.
Yeah, I love that. So when you were seeking things, you were seeking were accountability and isolation, or lack of isolation. That happened through the group and the work we were doing, and it translated over to your personal life.
Yes.
Because how you do anything is how you do everything, which I love. So yeah. So in closing, anybody who might be watching this may be thinking, well, I don't know. What would you say? Hey, based on my experience, this is how you might decide. Like, this is for you if, and this is really not for you if. What do you think?
It's not for you if you don't want to put in time and think and be with yourself. That's an easy one. It's for you if you really want to change, because if you haven't changed, you're not going to change without support and accountability and coaching. So
right.
So this gives you all of that. So if you really want to change and make a change and committed to that, then this is the program.